Okay, so in this episode of What the Health, we are going to talk about what processed foods are okay to eat. If you're a processed food junkie, you should be excited. Take it over, Holly.
I'm like, wait, that's most of America. That's why we're doing this. I beg Mr. O'Brien. Okay, for the next What the Health Show episode, can we please talk about what is a whole food? What is a processed food? What is an ultra processed food? What can we eat? So he said, yes, absolutely. Let's do this. So let's dive in. Guys, here's the deal. We can't get away from processed foods. And not all processed foods are like the end of the world. And it depends on how much you're eating. So first off, Mr. O'Brien, can you share with us what the heck is a whole food? What is a whole food?
Yeah, we love to keep things simple, actionable, and we're targeting people that actually want to invest time, energy, resources into their health, prioritize their health, because we believe our health is our wealth. And if that's not for you, that's okay. You can go eat your processed foods and be on your way. But for those of you that want to live your best life now, this is the content that we're going to try to produce and give you actionable information. So first off, let's just be frank. According to the FDA and the actual buying habits of Americans, 65% of our calories today are coming from processed or an ultra processed food. So Holly asked the question, what's a whole food versus a processed food versus an ultra processed food? So that's a whole new category they had to invent because processed foods just didn't do it justice anymore. But my litmus test for what a whole food is a food as close to it exists in nature. Mother Nature invented food. God invented food for us to eat. Farmers grow the food, and then we eat it. So whole foods are, like I said, as close to it exists in real life in nature. So
okay, so this apple is a whole food.
That's a great example. Yes, whole food. And yeah, we could go into debates of organic and shelf lives and where that actually came from. But when in doubt, eat a whole food. It's going to be better, whether it's organic or not, than a processed food, and certainly better than ultra processed food. Yummy, yummy. Fiber, nutrients, and the fiber kind of suppresses some of that glucose response. That's the naturally occurring fructose in the fruit. So Mother Nature knew what she was doing. Processed food is the next level of using a machine or mechanical engineering to break down that food or process it for either more palatability, shelf life, ease of consumption, or concentrating the ingredients so they're sweeter and make them more yummy for our tummies.
This is applesauce, by the way. Matt didn't know. I'm like, I have props for us today. So we visual. So if you're a visual person, this is a whole apple. This is applesauce.
Yeah, so that would be a great example of a processed food. Cheese would be an example of a processed food. Ground beef is an example of a processed food.
So like not all processed foods are bad, right? Because like ground beef isn't bad.
Right. And that's where, honestly, in Nutrition Made Simple, which is our nutrition program, the two ways we look at, the lens that we look at whether a food is good for us or bad, just to simplify it really down to the nuts and bolts is, what is a food that we eat or something that we drink? What is it going to do to inflammation in the body and insulin in the body? So for the most part, whole foods are going to be the best option when you look at it through that lens. And when it gets into processed foods, then you would look at that applesauce that Holly showed us versus ground beef. The ground beef is going to have a much better response in terms of inflammation and insulin because that applesauce is going to spike insulin, not to the degree of apple juice, which is even more processing, and certainly not to the degree of an ultra processed food, which we're about to talk about. So
I went to go buy a box of Apple Jacks and it was $6. I was like, oh, heck no, I'm not doing that. So I printed one out for you guys. Apple Jacks.
Yeah. So ultra processed foods, which is a category, a name that they've recently come up with to define Generally, it's going to be ultra refined carbohydrates in the form of sugar and wheat, typically. So, some kind of ultra refined carbohydrate, salt, and typically a polyunsaturated fatty acid. So, sugar, flour, salt, and canola oil or soybean oil or safflower oil or all those oils that you typically would see on the packaging. So we'll get to this later, but one of the big takeaways we want you to leave with, if you leave with nothing else today, is I used to drive Holly nuts with this.
Oh no!
Trust but
verify. This still drives me crazy. Yet I am coming around because holy heck, it makes a difference. Trust but verify what people are talking about. And this man, that one, oh my gosh, verifies everything, which makes it easy because we can trust him.
We like to think that. And a real quick story. We're going to tell more stories because I think that makes things more sticky and memorable. So this is a good example. Holly, who by osmosis lives with me, she knows a lot. But even she got duped by the marketing headlines that are on food. And the other takeaway, and this goes hand in hand with read the labels or trust but verify, is understand what's in it, what's the ingredients, and don't trust what the hype on the front. You know, heart healthy food or keto low carb, or in this case, Holly came home, she's like, oh my God, we got this great new bread. It's only 1 gram of carbohydrate. And I was like, what was my first question? What's in it? What's the first ingredient?
I was like, I don't know.
You didn't. And I was like, trust but verify. You didn't read the ingredients. You can't coach your spouse, folks. But
I've learned.
Yeah. Do you remember what the first ingredient was, Holly?
Wheat,
gluten.
Wheat gluten, yes.
The same thing that people know, oh, I got to eat gluten-free because gluten will kill me, was the number 1 ingredient in the low-carb healthy bread. So that's why the food industry likes to trick us in lots of ways with marketing hype. And that's where you have to be understand, the more ingredients in the label, and if it's in a box bag, can, or some kind of packaging, and it's got a lot of ingredients and some that you can't recognize or pronounce that sound like some chemistry experiment, that's a good sign that's an ultra processed food versus, potentially, sliced up pineapple that's put into a container for you. That's a processed food, and the ingredients should be pineapple and maybe citric acid to preserve the freshness. So that's 2 ingredients, and the pineapple being 99.9% of it versus 57 ingredients. That's the biggest takeaway. If you can remember that and minimize how many of those foods you're eating, to the degree that I like to use that 80-20 rule. 80% of your food should be as close to whole food as possible. And then 20% can be processed foods. And of those foods, I try to keep 5 to 10% of my total calories, for things that might be considered ultra processed or maybe a dessert, or I call them fun foods like ice cream. And even in ice cream, if you look at Haagen-Dazs versus Breyers, Haagen-Dazs, 4 ingredients. Breyers, 57 ingredients. I'm making that up, but there's a lot and you can't recognize them. So in that scenario, I'm going to go with the ice cream with less ingredients that I can, and all that I can recognize versus ones that I can't. So read the labels, trust but verify, whatever makes sense to you, and you'll stay out of trouble for the most part.
So the good news is, here's the deal, guys. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to give everything up, right? We are not extremists, because if you're an extremist, more often than not, most people can't stick to it, including me. So what Mr. O'Brien is saying, just make sure 80% of your food isn't the processed food, isn't the ultra processed food. Switch it the other way around. Believe it or not, you can't overeat whole foods. Your body says, I'm full. So if you have a satiation problem, you maybe have seen this in my stories or Matt's stories. If you have a satiation problem, say that 10 times fast.
That's hard to say.
Meaning, what does that mean? That means if you're hungry all the time, if you're just not full, if you are finishing the bag of chips. I said this to Keegan this morning, be very proud of me. So we were talking about Whole Foods, potatoes. So we're going to make some homemade potato chips. I said, Keegan, curious, you didn't finish breakfast this morning because you got full. He said, yeah, I wanted to finish my homemade muffins that Mimi made, but I was so full. Right. I said, awesome. Great. You were full. Your body said, I'm full. You were satiated. Now, when you sit down with a bag of chips, when do you stop eating the chips? And he's like, haha, when the bag's gone. I'm like, exactly. That's because it's an ultra processed food. Your body doesn't say, I'm full. Stop eating. Turn this off. Do you know what he literally, Matt? Light bulb went off. And I'm like, sweetheart, that's what we're trying to teach. That's why we're going to make homemade potato chips. But
in our brand new air fryer.
Yes. I'm like, if kids can understand this, oh my gosh, Matt, we need to teach this. So I do have a quick question. What if it says on the box, non-GMO? The big print is cauliflower, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cauliflower. But I'm feeding my kids cauliflower.
Well, first off, because it's in a box and it's got an ingredients label, how many, is there a long list of ingredients or?
It's too long. It's too long.
A lot, right?
Yeah.
So what was my litmus test? Trust.
Funny, the first ingredient's potato starch.
Read the ingredients. What's the number one ingredient?
The first thing is potato starch.
Yeah.
Potato.
So this is what food companies do to trick us. And this is why you have to be self-aware, take ownership. There's the O word, ownership for your health, and be responsible like adults that we are, especially when it involves our children, because now 50% of our children are overweight or obese, and now 1 out of 5 is pre-diabetic or diabetic. You're going to hear me speaking about these stats ad nauseum because it's reminding me that we have got to do something and take this seriously. But cauliflower is the rage. You're going to see cauliflower crust pizza. We went to a franchise pizza place, and Holly was trying to be, do the right thing and ordered the cauliflower crust pizza. She asked, what's in it compared to the regular crust. They couldn't really tell us, so we had to look it up on the company website, and it turns out the cauliflower crust had more carbohydrates in it than the regular crust. So that's a good example of those boxes. Those are what I mean by the marketing hype. Non-GMO, what's another, like farm raised, these are terms, heart healthy, gut friendly, things that are
free. I bought this too. This is a good one. You bought this for a demo, and I found it. I don't know. It's probably moldy. I found it in the cabinet. I was like, oh, this is a great demo.
I doubt it's moldy. It's probably got a shelf life of 50 years.
Maybe it'll never get moldy. But here's the deal, guys, go back to what Mr. O'Brien just said. When we looked at the ingredients, it had more carbohydrates. Cauliflower doesn't have a lot of carbohydrates. The reason he's saying that is because there's other ingredients. Majority of the ingredients is not cauliflower. There may be a little sprinkle of cauliflower powder, but doesn't mean that it's a cauliflower crust pizza like we make at home. So like this one here, 0 net carbs, high fiber, 0 grams of sugar. It's keto certified. It must be good for me.
What's the number one ingredient?
There's a lot of ingredients and it's really small.
You may not be able to read it.
Modified wheat starch.
In parentheses, aka gluten.
Wheat gluten, isolate vegetable, something I can't read. I was like, I can't read these.
Exactly. So I think a good comparison, since you showed me, that those cauliflower crackers versus the seed crackers that you also have, this would be a good. I know you have them. So let's just go from this litmus test, trust but verify. If you just read the ingredients of that versus that cauliflower crackers, if you just looked at how many ingredients were in there, the list of ingredients, which one has less?
Oh, this by far. And I actually can read all of them.
Because you recognize the names. It sounds like pumpkin seeds.
It's
sunflower seeds.
Like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, sesame seeds, black sesame seeds, poppy seeds, psyllium, garlic, onion, pink Himalayan salt. That's it.
So there you go. And the caveat would be sometimes they'll take a processed food like that, and then they'll turn it into an ultra processed food by pulverizing the crap out of all those ingredients, adding some wheat starch, adding other ingredients, and then putting in some kind of high temp, high processed oil. And then suddenly it doesn't become so appealing. So the less ingredients and the more you recognize them, the better. And then going back to the 80-20 rule, 80%, the simple thing is like try to eat 2 meals a day with real food on your plate, protein and vegetables. And going back to that satiation word, Holly was having fun trying to pronounce. I have a little mnemonic or a rhyme that I always remember, and it might help you remember too. Protein is great because it satiates. I'll say it again. Protein is great because it satiates. And it really does, because protein is the one critical macronutrient, and fat being the second. Carbohydrates are essential, meaning we could live our entire life without ever eating a carbohydrate. So that's just facts. But protein is digested amino acids. It's part of bone, muscle, skin, all kinds of chemical processes, catalysts for enzymatic reactions in the body. So protein, when you're deficient, you're going to be hungry and you're going to crave more and more foods. So when you are satiated with protein, your appetite's going to be more in check, and you're not going to have to use so much willpower to rein in your appetite. So try to lead, or now it's kind of in vogue to say protein forward nutrition plan.
And you've been saying that for years. It's so funny. Like, there's so many times that Matt has said, like when you wrote your book years ago, you even told me, you're like, Holly, this is new science or new whatever. Like, people think it's woo-woo. Just mark my words. This is going to be our world. And oh my gosh, Matt, we've been married for 17 years now. You've been stuck with your lovely wife. You drive me crazy for 17 years. And so many times throughout a marriage, you have predicted things that were going to happen, and then they've happened. Guys, this man is extremely intelligent. He does his research. He learns from the top of the top of the top. He is a critical thinker, right? Like, his criticism or being critical used to drive me crazy. Some of it, let's just be real, some of it does. Yet, there's far outweighs the positive part of being a critical thinker, because you ask questions and you say, that doesn't sound right. I'm going to do my research. And you really find the science behind it, not the hype, not the who's making the most money or like what. No, like the actual fact. So I'm honored to like have you as my partner. One of the reasons I partnered with him, I'm like, hey, we need to join forces, because with my personality
and beautiful looks
and enthusiasm for life, oh my gosh, we're going to help a lot of people together. And that's one of the reasons we're here.
Yeah. And that's a fact. And I think the two, when you really boil it down, what's causing the epidemic trends of obesity and type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's, they're all linked, in heart disease and cancer rates, all linked to metabolic dysfunction. And now it's 88% of Americans are somewhere on the metabolically dysfunctional spectrum. And what we can do about it, it's remarkably 6 weeks, you can reverse it with what we're talking about. Nutrition, you got to eat real food or whole food. That's in my book behind me, The Magic Pill, like Holly said, written a while back. Number one, I have the nutritional 10 commandments. And number one is thou shalt eat whole food, real food. And I also predicted in that book, the big food industry, just like the tobacco industry, the CEOs of tobacco were called in front of Congress, and a lot of big changes came as a result of that. Taxation on cigarettes, massive labels. They can't advertise the way they used to. The same thing's going to happen ultimately with the right policymakers in place, which remains to be seen if that's going to happen. But I predicted in that book by 2022, 2023, so I was a little off. It's almost there that those food industry executives are going to be in front of Congress getting grilled like the tobacco industry, because they're creating addictive, ultra-processed foods. And if you haven't heard, A lot of the tobacco companies hedged their bets and bought food companies, and then they used their tobacco chemists that studied addiction of nicotine, and they applied those same principles in creating addictive foods. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not going to blame them for trying to make more money. But at some point, if they did it willingly and wantonly, they're going to be called on the carpet for addicting a lot of Americans and American children to these ultra-processed foods that are causing metabolic dysfunction and therefore causing type 2 diabetes and all these downstream diseases, which are going to bankrupt the United States, bankrupt Social Security, bankrupt all things. We cannot print enough money to get past this crisis. So that's why, whether you have kids or not, it still matters to you if you want to have Social Security in your retirement, like I would like, having paid into it. We have to do something about it, and that's what we're trying to do, at least make a dent and increase awareness and hopefully get people out of awareness and into action, or maintain your awareness, but then take action.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show. So people that are watching, freaking out right now, going, oh my gosh, what can we do? Oh my gosh, like, don't go crazy and go into your closet and take a garbage bag and throw everything out. It's just not going to stick. So, I mean, you can do that if you want, but we're trying to give you tools to make it simple, because we love simple. Our whole programs are based on being simple. How do we put this into action now? How do we make this simple? Where do we start? So Mr. O'Brien has already discussed a little bit of that. Switch up. Instead of buying this, start feeding your children and feeding yourself, not just your kids. Oh, the Oreos are in there because the kids. Guys, this is you and them. This is a family unit. They will follow what you do. Take the first step and then have them follow. Start introducing whole foods. Start introducing new things, right? Children are very malleable. Did I say the word right? Malleable. Malleable? They're moldable.
Yeah, that's even better.
Right? So
like clay, we can mold them.
Yes, we can mold them. So don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like you're a failure. We're not saying any of those things at all. We're bringing this in a humorous way to say, hey guys, guess what? Yes, there is something you can do about it. And you can actually do it today with dinner. If you've already eaten dinner, do it tomorrow with breakfast. So what are some simple ways we can start so people are not going, oh no, and they freeze?
Well, if you're, a drive-through junkie, is because you have a busy lifestyle. It's going to involve baby steps. And I would say, at least start with one meal a day. Part of America, the family unit, we got to get back to family supper, family dinner. That time is so important for stress, for how we digest our food. There's so much more than the actual food you're eating, but just start with at least one meal a day and prioritize that, make that stick. And then ultimately, if you can get 2 real food, whole food meals a day, and that's going to represent that 80% of the calories I was talking about. And it's honestly simple food prep. If you're eating protein and a vegetable, I would say, if Holly's not cooking and I'm getting home, 8 o'clock, sometimes 8:30, I can literally prep a meal. If it's already cooked, let's assume it's not, but I can throw chicken or steak or fish on a pan fryer and, not frying it, deep frying, just sauteing it, whatever.
Yeah.
In 5 to 12 minutes. And then literally while that's doing it, I'll put a bunch of mixed greens in a bowl or some vegetables, and then just put the protein on top. And, protein and vegetables, it's really simple in concept. And if you're like, oh, I don't like vegetables, you can go just eat the protein. Start with that. Carnivore diet is very anti-inflammatory. And if you like protein-based foods, it's an easy solution for some. Not everybody, but for some, it just makes it stupid simple. But start with, know where you're at, take one step, make that stick, and then take the next step. And, there's too much information now. We came through the information age. Now we're in the information confusion age. So just simple. Everybody knows about the perimeter of the grocery store. just make it simpler than that. Put a real protein on your plate with some vegetables and do that 2 meals a day. And then with one of those meals, a fist-sized portion of a starch-based food. It's that simple, literally. If you want to go to 3 meals, have a breakfast, then you could, add that third meal. Or maybe breakfast is one of the two. And then, for most of my clients, I have them do a protein supplement of some kind to keep their protein intake a little bit higher. And it's, technically a processed food, but it's an engineered processed food to serve a purpose. So that would be my caveat on that. And it's that simple. And
Yeah.
we got to get to work. Let's do it.
It is that simple. And another thing I would suggest is share this with a friend. So whatever platform you're watching this on, share this with a friend, because guess what? You're changing someone's life. That's what we get to do here. It's not just us talking at you. It's us sharing with you what works, what doesn't work. And hey, guess what? We can share it out even more. So first step, just start with one. Change one meal, right? Shift one meal and then start with another meal. Share this with a friend. Start caring enough about where you are today so you can really care about where you're going to be tomorrow. Because here's the deal. What you do now directly affects what happens to you tomorrow. You're either giving life to yourself or you're taking it away. Every decision you make, you're either giving or you're taking. So it's time for you to start giving back to you. Your tomorrow will never say, I hate it. Your tomorrow will never say, why did you take care of yourself today? Your kids will thank you. Your family will thank you. Your friends will thank you. And we will thank you because we have a big mission and we cannot do it alone.
Well said. And, that just starts, what food you bring into the house makes willpower a lot more your friend if you don't have to avoid something that's in your house, because when it's not there, it's going to be a lot less of a temptation. So
do you remember when I was addicted to mac and cheese? Really quick before we sign off, I know we're done, but dude, guys, oh my gosh, it was so bad. I would be trying to put it away and Matt would see me eating it as I'm putting it away, and that doesn't even faze me anymore. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's not, it's science, but whoa.
Yeah. Understand those. I call them trigger foods. And for me, it's chocolate chip cookies or any cookie for that matter. I don't discriminate. So Holly and I have agreement those cookies don't enter the house in the first place. And if I want those to be a fun food, then it's a specific purchase in a controlled environment and I can control the exposure. But if there's Oreos sitting in the house, those puppies are going down. I lost that experiment many times. So, I have the knowledge and the awareness, but, we got to use tools to help us be successful. And that's where support of a friend or an accountability partner or a spouse can also be helpful. So like Holly said earlier, share it with somebody, join forces and commit to baby steps. Don't say, we're going to lose 100 pounds in 3 months. Baby step. We're going to commit to eating one meal, whole foods a day for the next 3 weeks and start there. And let's do this.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching another episode of What the Health Show. Thank you, Matt, for squeezing this in. As you guys can tell, no one is immune. We are here to support you. We're human as well. We love you. Thank you for watching. Share this with a friend and make sure to tune in for another episode of What the Health Show, because we are here to share simple ways for you to change your health today so you can start truly loving your tomorrow.
Our health is our wealth.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.